I'm standing just beside the churchyard at Le Port. Of course, behind me you can see the bridge. Just behind you is the church itself. 7th Parachute Battalion men came across the bridge and across this direction and took up position, B Company men, around the churchyard. Richard Todd, when he arrived at the bridge with Colonel Pinecoffin, was sent forward to this area to set up the 7th Parachute Battalion headquarters. It wasn't any structure or anything like that, it was just a hollow that they used. And in fact, when the gunboat came along the river, it saw the 7th Parachute Battalion men in the open there and started firing, and they exchanged fire. This position at Le Port was very important because it was on a high spot. You could see in all directions, particularly to the east. Also, there was a road that led to Saint-Aubin d'Archenay, which would be the road along which the troops came from Sword Beach. So it was an important junction to try and have clear for the arrival of the British forces. In front of us we have the Mairie at Benouville and the T-junction and the bridge just down the road. The position of the 7th Parachute Battalion they took up, it was quite strong around this churchyard, but they also had men scattered in this distance between the Mairie and the churchyard. But they were very thin on the ground, very undermanned, obviously with the scattered drop. But it was here Lieutenant Ted Paul's B Company, or the remnants of it, took up position around the churchyard. This is the churchyard itself. Lieutenant Paul's men were behind this wall, just behind you, and also in this area. Pressure during the day increased constantly. It was a very fluid battle with fire coming from buildings opposite, then it would wane, then it would start up again. There was also a problem with snipers in this church tower all through the day. So they were very careful, they had to keep their heads down. The sniper problem throughout the morning, they had made various attempts to get into the church. Ted Paul had led some men in through that door into the church to try and get into the tower. But when they got to the bottom of the stairs, they could see the actual entrance is only about that wide. And there was no way they could get up it. And that's why they couldn't get at these snipers hand to hand during the day. The pressure increased as the morning went on, and it got so bad with the loss of so many 7th Battalion men. Major Howard was asked to send a section to this area, and one of the men who came in that section was Denis Edwards. They came up here and were instructed to occupy these houses just here. Those houses became very hotly contested because they were actually firing. There's a little lane beyond it, and the Germans were in the houses on the opposite side of the road. So it was very, very close fighting here in that particular area for a spell. This is Michael McGee, DCM, A Company, 7th Parachute Battalion, who was particularly remembered for an action in this area. When some of the sniping had got particularly bad, he was asked to go forward with a peer and another chap. They went across the road and took up position in one of the upstairs windows in that opposite house. Tommy Killeen was ordered to come forward with a peer and another colleague. They came around this way, took up position in a house in an upstairs window just above us. He set the peer on the windowsill, aimed at the church tower and scored a direct hit, which silenced the sniping for quite a time. After the action, he came down the stairs, walked across the road, and being a devout Catholic, firing at a church was quite an ordeal. But as he told people afterwards, I took my helmet off before I entered the church. During the action in Benouville, a lot of the armour that was coming through was coming down that main road. And at one stage, it was almost breaking through. Incredibly, McGee jumped out into the road, walking towards this tank, firing at it with a Bren gun. This actually distracted those in the tank and allowed others to get out and put gammon bombs on it and knock it out. Sadly, he was killed a little bit later in the action. This is Private McAra. He belonged to A Company and was one of the first men killed. Lieutenant Hunter had taken his group down the road towards Benouville reached the crossroads where the entrance to the maternity home is, they turned right to take up a position, and there was a kind of a hedge, and McAra was asked to go through the hedge to check the other side, and when he got there he ran straight into two Germans who killed him. In fact, that was sort of the action that kicked off the morning's action really in Benouville. It all escalated from that moment. Getting towards midday, Denis Edwards and his men were brought further up in this direction, and they were actually firing with Germans. Germans were on the opposite side of the wall, and they were hiding behind some of the graves. This was all getting pretty hot, and there was all sorts of German insults coming at them, and all of a sudden they heard this sound, which they couldn't believe. It was the sound of the pipes. This is the square at Le Port, just in front of the church, and this is the area where the Airborne met the commandos. Initially, Captain Alan Pyman had led 3 troop of 6 commando here and met Pine Coffin, where he apologised for being 2 minutes late. It wasn't Lord Lovett. A little while later, the bulk of the commando arrived, of 6 commando, arrived at a road just up there, and 2 Sherman tanks had attached themselves to the commandos. They came along here, Bill Millen playing behind them, and they met in this area. They asked the tanks at the time to give the church tower a couple of rounds, and then arrange what they were going to do before moving off down the hill towards the Mary and then turning left towards the bridge.